Hey guys, my name is Serena and I'm making this video for people who are in the process of applying to SLP grad school, specifically for the people who had a lower GPA in their undergrad. I know that when I was doing my research on how to apply, I would have really appreciated a video like this to help get me through my applications. So first things first, I want to take a second to thank God. I know that religion and faith is not everyone's cup of tea, but I know that I wouldn't be here without His grace. So I'm making this video because I promised myself that if I got into grad school that I would make one to help all the people who are just starting the process and are a little lost like I was. A little disclaimer, I'm not saying that everything I did was the best route possible, but this is my journey and I would like to share it with anyone who needs to hear it and anyone who will listen, quite frankly. Now, despite the title, this is not a do the bare minimum and you'll be fine video. SLP is a very competitive field, and the better your resume, which includes your GPA, the better off you'll be. So you won't have to feel as nervous when applying for grad school if you have a well-rounded application. So quickly, just my stats. I have a 3.09 cumulative GPA, and I'm not exactly sure how to do my major GPA, how to calculate it. Some people say only your major classes. Some people say just the last 60 credit hours. My last 60 credit hours, I had a 3.41 GPA. Now, my Gre Score, I had a 296, a 149 verbal, 147 quantitative, and a 3.5 writing. I did take it 2 times. My first score was a 145 verbal, a 147 quantitative, and a 3.5 writing. So I did have 3 letters of recommendation, 2 from communication disorders professors and 1 from an SLP that I worked under. This video will be a breakdown of my applications and why I did what I did, things that I've learned, things that I would or wouldn't do again, and advise anyone else to do. So my quick backstory, I graduated from my undergrad at Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois. I started with the ComD major, a communication disorders major. So SLP has always been the goal for me. If you don't know what SLP is, it stands for speech language pathology. SLPs work to prevent, assess, diagnose, and treat speech, language, social communication, cognitive communication, and swallowing disorders in children and adults. So I went in thinking that C's, while they weren't the goal, would be alright because technically I wasn't failing. Wrong. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. The field of SLP does not want average or mediocre clinicians, so my first piece of advice is to start an undergrad. Start what, you may ask? Everything possible that will boost your resume, meaning maintaining a great GPA, your references, your networking skills, your leadership skills and organizational involvement, and any SLP related experience. All of these basic areas could help strengthen your chances of getting into grad school, and if it's a little too late to improve your GPA drastically, then you need to make up for it in the other categories, like with your experience. So that's what happened to me. I thought I was doing enough academically, and then I really felt the pressure to catch up as much as I could towards the end. I got involved with organizations, I held a position, I made great relationships with my professors, I did an internship, anything that would help boost my resume to make up for the lost time. After undergrad, I took a 2-year gap year and worked. Had I applied right out of undergrad, I'm almost positive that I would have gotten rejected and had to try continuously, as I needed more experience due to my lower GPA. In the last 2 years, I worked 3 different jobs. My first job, I worked for 7 months as an instructional teaching assistant at Helping Hand. It's a school for children with autism, which is where I think I got the bulk of my experience, and it really helped me see the day-to-day of an SLP's role in that setting. I also saw the value of interdisciplinary teamwork of SLP, OTs, PTs, and ABAs, as the children needed multiple services daily to fit into their IEPs. I did not do speech language pathology assistant only because I know that in Illinois, you cannot practice as an assistant with just your bachelor's. You do need a certification of some type, which would involve a little more schooling. I'm sure it might have been like 1 to 2 more classes, but at that point, I was just a little done with school. So I wanted to do something that I could use my bachelor's with right away, and that's what led me to Helping Hand. Then I did 6 months at Unity Hospice, which was a great experience as well. It was another interdisciplinary setting with social workers, spiritual advisors, and nurses. I did more administrative work, so I helped coordinate the monthly interdisciplinary meetings where all the professions came together to discuss their patients, give updates, bounce off of each other for ideas, and really focus on how to help their patients. Then I came to a cancer research lab, which is where I am currently employed. Although the setting is not directly related to SLP, I found that this job has taught me what I don't want to do. Not just this job specifically, but in terms of seeing how easy it is to just see a patient's name and generalize them, just treat them as another case to do paperwork and to bill. I want to show and feel empathy for these people that are going through their emotional and health-related transition in their journey. With the motivation from my current job, I started to prepare for applications for fall 2020 admission, and that was a journey in and of itself. Here's a breakdown of how I did my applications. First, you need to know what you're looking for in a school. It's like my dad always says, do your research. Figure out what schools you'll be applying to, which for me was time consuming. So here are some things to look at if you're trying to see if you want to apply to the school. So you can look at if it's local and commutable versus going away, in and out of state. I didn't have a preference, especially since my GPA wasn't great. You can look at if the program is online versus traditional in-person. I wanted to attend a traditional in-person program as I'm a hands-on learner, and also I know I would procrastinate and be a little unmotivated if it was all online. You can look at if it's full-time versus part-time. I chose full-time. I just always knew getting my master's was the next step for me. So with no kids and having family and my boyfriend who's helped support me, I'm blessed to be able to do so. Another thing you should look at is cost of tuition, and then you want to look at what their program has to offer. If they have on-site clinics, do they do externships, things like that. And then of course you want to look at their requirements for their GPAs, GREs, and their letters of rec and things like that. With these parameters, I compiled a list of schools from the ASHA EDFind tool into a Google Doc. I did a Google Doc so I could access it from anywhere. I probably should have used Excel or spreadsheets. It might have been a little easier, but the more you know. ASHA is the American Speech Language Hearing Association, and they are the National Professional Scientific and Credentialing Association for SLPs and audiologists. So I really like this EDFind tool because it was reliable. For me, I couldn't necessarily be too picky about only applying locally because my GPA was lower. So I decided to take a filtering approach where I looked at every single school to see if they have accepted my GPA before or close to it. And then I went from there. This was the time-consuming part. So I went to the website, which I'll leave in the description box below, and I typed in speech language pathology, and it auto-populated all the schools that offer a degree in that area of study, undergrad and master's. So be mindful of that when you're looking to make sure you're looking at only the master's or only the undergrad. There are filters on the side of the page that I utilize in order to refine my search even further. The only filter I checked was the type of degree program. I checked master's. So I started with Abilene Christian University all the way down to the Shiva University Cat School of SLP. It was about 29 pages and about 10 schools per page, so that was fun. Then I checked to make sure if the school was accredited by the CAA. The CAA is the Council of Academic Accreditation in Audiology and SLP. I thought about applying to programs that are in the process of getting accredited, which I had heard being recommended when you have a lower GPA, as their program is newer and a little more flexible in their requirements, but I personally wanted to try accredited schools in my first round of applications. It honestly just scared me a little because with my luck, the school wouldn't end up being accredited in the end, and then I wouldn't be able to get my C's, which is my national certification, which you need to be a practicing SLP. So I just try to stick with accredited schools. Quick side note, it's not a common occurrence for schools to not be awarded accreditation status. I'm just a spaz and I don't like taking risks. With that being said, while doing research on accreditation status and the real risks of getting your master's from a school pending accreditation, per ASHA, I found that you can still apply for your C's if the school is pending approval, and I can leave that link down below as well. I really liked ASHA's EDFind because it gave a GPA range that the school had accepted before, so that was helpful for me to know if I actually had a chance on applying. I believe the general minimum GPA needed to apply to a SLP program is 3.0. Some vary by program, which can be found on the school's website. Then from those options, I filtered them further by researching their tuition costs to see if it was truly feasible for me to attend. Not just Google search, but through their website. Please note that some schools have tuition rates based off if you're a full-time student or a part-time student, full-time being enrolled in 12 to 15 credit hours, part-time being less. or they can give you the price per credit hour. If that's the case, then I try my best to research what a typical schedule for my program looked like, credit hour wise, and did the math. And then there are programs like mine that give you a set rate for their program. And the sad part is you never know 100% the exact amount until you're enrolled and you get your aid letter. Next, I looked at their GRE requirements. Now, this depends on if you've taken your GRE yet. If you don't know what the GRE is, it's the Graduate Record Examination, which is a standardized test that most grad schools require for their master's in SLP. I suggest doing your school research before taking your GRE, only because the first time I took it, I hadn't done it, so I was going in a little blind. The second time I took it, I had a score in mind, so it helped me gauge if I did well or not. That also helped me to decide if I wanted to send 4 scores for free or not, which is a preference. You're able to send your scores to 4 schools immediately after taking the official GRE, so I would have the score needed in mind to decide if you can utilize that option or not. Now, I used Magoosh to study for my GRE. I thought they did a good job at teaching you the basics so you could apply them to the different types of questions. They also gave great tips to avoid picking trap answers on the exam. When I used Magoosh, they gave an option of a 1-month or a 6-month plan. I chose the 1-month premium plan, and I believe it was for $150. I thought it was nice because of the way the website is formatted. It gives you a pre-scheduled breakdown of the lessons. I then took the pre-made lessons and broke them down even further into daily lessons. I like to study in spurts, so to speak, so instead of choosing one day to cram everything, I map out some time each day to gradually retain the information. So the lessons are pre-recorded, and it took me some time to write my notes because I had to keep pausing the video. But that was my process. It's also why I broke the lessons down even more, because I accounted for my note-taking time. I also love that they had an app for your phone where you could practice your vocab and the math theories they taught on the go. I will say that the pre-tests given by Magoosh are not the exact same as the real test as far as the format, but I believe it helped get the idea across of how long you would have to sit for. If you want to really know what it's like, take a pre-test from ETS, the Educational Testing Service. They're the ones who administer the official GRE test. Now, there are some tips that I kept hearing when I was doing my research to take the GRE. Here are the ones that I believe rang true. First, take a pretest. This will help give you an idea of where you're at and where you need to be, where you can work on. Math has always been a weak subject for me, so I made sure I studied extra hard for that portion. Second, a lot of people ask, when should I start studying? I take the GRE in 1 month, in 3 months, 6 months. Now. The answer is now. Right now. After this video, start looking up YouTube videos that help teach you, and then when you can get the money together, buy the study plan, whichever it may be. Like I said, I chose Magoosh, but that's completely up to you to do your own research and find the one that best fits you. As far as my letters of recommendation, like I mentioned earlier, I was able to get 2 from professors in my major and 1 from an SLP I worked directly under. Remember, I said I took 2 years off, so reaching out to professors I hadn't talked to in 2 years was a little nerve-wracking. However, I emailed them because the worst they could say was no, right? Or not reply. But I took my chance and it worked. This is another reason why professor relationships are very important to make during undergrad. The 2 professors I got to write for me remembered me immediately. I, of course, jogged their memories a bit, but they remembered me. All because I shadowed one for a summer and made sure to utilize office hours, and the other was like a mentor to me, so it was a little easier. And the SLP I worked under was more recent, so it was a little easier for me to ask as well. If you've been at a school longer, letters from supervisors from jobs and other organizations are what I would recommend to obtain. As for my letter of intent or personal statement, whatever it's called for your school, this was a hard one for me because I'm a person who needs structure. I was hoping the prompt would state the exact things I wanted to hear or give a format, but they didn't. A lot were just very basic, like, tell me why you should be in our program. Your letter is a chance for you to get a little creative and show who you are and why you're a great pick. So I basically researched a lot of articles that explain what a great letter of intent looked like. After some research, I realized that every great letter was deemed so because it was so personalized. No 2 letters looked the same. Something that stuck with me and that I used in my own letter was the idea of opening with a story, just to grab their attention and not start off with, I will be a great fit for your program because X, Y, and Z. The story turned into how I got introduced into SLP because of my nephew. So after that intro, I wrote about how different experiences would help me be a great candidate. For example, I talked about how being president of an organization helped me be a better communicator, and how my job at a daycare helped me see the milestones of language development and things like that. Then I made sure to add in how I was looking forward to working with specific faculty members and why and what facilities and benefits they offered that I was excited for. This helps them know that it's not a cookie cutter letter just copied and pasted, that you are actually interested in the program and invested some time into researching them. Lastly, I want to talk about CITCAS. CITCAS is a Communication Sciences and Disorders Centralized Application Service. This is basically where you apply to programs. It's nice because you have your main items that are needed already uploaded, like your transcripts, your Gre scores. Then you add the schools you want to apply to, and then there are certain requirements for each school. Like some schools had a little questionnaire to fill out, and then had specific locations to upload your letters of intent, if applicable. Quick note, most SLP programs utilize CITCAS. You can find if your program does by looking at the program's official website and also by seeing if it pops up as an option in CITCAS. Also be wary that some schools require for you to apply through CITCAS and the school. Like I said, these specifics can be found on the specific program's website under their admissions requirements. My biggest advice for this part of the application is to start early and to save. Application costs are no joke. Your first application on CITCAS costs $133 and then $53 per program that you add. I applied to 9 programs, so in total I paid $557 for applications, and that was just for CITCAS. Don't forget fees that you have for your Gre scores to be sent, fees for your transcripts to be sent, or if you have to send in a fee to apply to the program directly, or even fees for the transcript entry service offered for CITCAS. This service enters your official transcript info for you, and then you proofread after to make sure it's correct to submit. You can do it on your own. It will just take some time. I personally use the tool because the process of applying itself was tiring, so I took advantage of the service, but some people can advocate to not use it. Totally up to you. In essence, the cost of applications alone are enough to turn some people away from applying at all. So that's my process of how I applied to grad school and how I figured out which schools to apply to. And I do want to mention that I did get into a grad program, if you haven't guessed already. I will be attending Midwestern University in Downers Grove, Illinois in the fall of 2020. I just want to finish this video by stating my 3 pieces of advice. First, like I said before, start everything now. You won't regret it. Second, do your own research. Yes, it's helpful to hear from others about their experiences, but every position is different. Some have amazing turnouts and some don't. You have to be the deciding factor. And last but not least, you can do this. There can be a lot of odds against you, but if you truly, genuinely want it, you can do it. SLP is what I wanted for a long time now, and if you're close to me, then you know it's all I can talk about when I talk about my future. I know it can be hard to believe in your applications when you see all these stats on people who have 4.0s and have all these extracurriculars on their resume, but you have to remember that they're not you. You are more than your GPA. I know that I was told by an SLP who was on the admissions board for a grad program that I should pursue another career, that my GPA wouldn't cut it, and I shouldn't even try to apply. But look at me now. I mean, I got in on my first round of applications. It takes some people multiple rounds of applying to get in, and they have better GPAs than I do. I'm honestly not 100% sure what got me accepted into not 1 but 2 programs. Sorry, not to toot my own horn, but I was convinced that I wouldn't get any acceptances on my first round, let alone more than 1. But it was obvious to me that I saw everything else I had to offer besides my GPA. You are not your GPA. Say it with me. You are not your GPA. Not to say that it isn't important and that you should try to have the best one you can, but you are more than 1 criteria. Believe in yourself, because I do. Thank you and good luck.